Ladies and gentlemen, Wednesday, 7:30, we are here. DebateSensei, we got Tim Seavey from Visolutions, an Assistant Director of Forensics. Hello.
Hey.
And we got Matt Shapiro, Esquire.
How you doing, Jared? How you doing, Tim?
All right. Doing all right. I'm Jared Kabiga-Miller. I am a debate coach and professor of communications. Okay, and so we had a special request for our episode today. Let me make sure that we got this going on the right. Yep. Everything's looking good. Excellent. So the special request that we had was to talk about what do we think next season is going to look like. And I think that the timing of this is unfortunately really appropriate because we just got news that we are basically seeing another spike in infection rates in several different states, worse than we had it before. And so if we weren't able to stop it the first time, how long is this going to last? And well, like there are really big problems to think about with that question. A slightly smaller one, but something still worth discussing is how is it going to affect the debate season next season. So that's where we're going to go. And I'm going to jump off by saying that I think that best case scenario is that like December, that there might be some travel allowed around then, maybe. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm even 50-50 on that one.
Are you talking like interstate travel?
What?
Are you talking like you're thinking interstate travel, or like that's the first time we have
other campuses, just to campuses?
Okay.
Yeah, like even driving. If all you were doing is driving,
and that is best case scenario. I mean, Jared just said December as a timeline, but the uncertainty of right now, it's very hard to even say December for as scary as that is, right? Like there's a lot of probably evidence that we could dive into that just goes into saying that it could be a lot longer than that.
That's why I'm saying best case, even like best case scenario. I'm not trying to be conservative here.
I agree. I think like I am optimistic, and like I've been in my house too, and I hope that we can all get out and the thought of hanging out with everyone at a debate tournament sounds like a great time right about now. Right? Yeah. Like this is the opposite of that. So, one thing though, not to dive into this too quickly, you can kind of mitigate a bit of complete isolation, or at least with online debates. So I think next year you may see a spike in more formalized, online debate tournaments, at least as a contingency to, if something doesn't work, right? Like purely based on public health. I mean, we're not disagreeing on anything like that. It's just the question is on everyone's mind. Tim, what do you think? I mean, as far as this question goes, I think brought to us by Swish Fish. Thank you very much.
I definitely think that online is going to be a bigger component of it. I don't think that would be a surprise to anyone. I think the number of tournaments that were pretty successfully handled online gives good evidence to the likelihood that probably most, if not all of the fall semester, like you said, is going to be online. And then I'm thinking maybe some hybrid stuff come springtime. Like obviously, I think everyone wants to be back at a full tournament as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. But as most campuses, and now, you're seeing some states that are putting restrictions on travel if you live in another state, right? Which is, I don't think, unreasonable given some of the spikes like Jared was talking about. So I think, travel is going to be super limited, especially large travel. But even for just local in-person tournaments, most schools are going to keep that, for good reason, locked down. So I think that it would be in just about every tournament director's best interest to get good at online and talk to those people that are running online tournaments as soon as possible to start planning for it.
Yeah. One thing that comes to my mind as you were speaking now, Tim, like, I'm not sure exactly how anything will work, and maybe if everyone in a tournament couldn't get together, that's one thing. But maybe at least if a partner could socially distance and control their environment enough to where like two people could maybe at least really get down on a case together. I mean, I think as far as I do think that we need to push getting efficient on Zoom and StreamYard and things like that, because we talk about how it's probably not going anywhere for the long haul, and also like as far as acutely this situation, like it's definitely like an alternative to nothing getting done. But there is something we miss. I've even discussed with our team here. Like, I just want to get back together. I like, we work together. Like, there's an aspect of just being together that I miss. And if we can, if we can socially distance and control our environments, within, a group of 2 or 3, like that's at least as far as, communication wise, it's much more feasible than getting a tournament of 1,000 people together or something like that.
I mean, I just spoke at the National IE conference, and I was talking about the asynchronous debate that we put on the tournament, the IE tournament.
Yeah.
It was awesome because there were so many people from all around the country that was there, and some people are explaining how their college would definitely not be able to support the bandwidth for everyone on the team to be streaming at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that, like, first off, like the that's a new option that you could think about. It would be like this hybrid where you might come into your own campus to have your tournament, and they're kind of supplying a lot of the equipment in the environment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then that is how you participate. So it wouldn't necessarily be at home like we're doing right now. I think that's really awesome.
It's funny.
Option. That could happen before December too.
Just thinking about that. I mean, in debate tournaments, obviously we always have what does it look like? You have 20, 30, 40, 50 rooms sectioned off at either a hotel or a school or something like that. Like, the nature of that by itself is kind of funny, where like you localize a little bit. See, the problem though, I mean, I'm not trying to get too negative here and pessimistic, but the problem is not necessarily the debate time. It's the 18 hours. They're not in a contest. They're not, it's the mingling, it's the friendship, it's the the things that naturally draw people together and touch the same surfaces and all this nonsense. So
posting.
I think it's a little short-sighted to be like, in the actual 30 minutes or hour of a debate, they were socially distancing, and then they just went crazy after that. So there is just a lot of questions around so much more than the actual debate time. We can actually control that probably better than we can control anything else, as far as
Tim, like, when would you be okay with like what do you think about that idea about bringing people into campus to like, and having the university or college facilitate their competition?
That's a really neat idea.
You're at the university now.
Yeah, I would think if you can get the green light, I think that a lot of schools would be a much better platform than all of the variables that come up with students competing at home, right? So, one obstacle or another, just about every team is going to face some weird, challenges, be it equipment or bandwidth at a student's home, or just sometimes the space, or sometimes, like you've got another parent that needs to use that kind of time or that equipment thing. So I think the competition over resources would be solved if you can go to a college campus. Like most campuses that I know of have, campus-wide Wi-Fi that's used to having an entire student body using it at the same time, including faculty. Yeah. So I would imagine that would be possible. You end up looking at like have you ever seen the movie like Ender's Game? It would be kind of like that. Like, all right, everyone go into your space, and now you are competing in your tournament, even though it's a little isolated pod. That could actually be pretty cool. And I know like San Diego is investing in equipment for a lot of their students. So getting tabletop lights and lapel mics and things like that to send to students, which I know that a lot of schools maybe not have that capability, but I mean, you have a travel budget that is definitely going to go unused. So if schools are allowed to start allocating some of that stuff to equipment that could be used on campus, that actually could be, like making a classroom into like 15 mini studios. That's, doable. I guess the sound would become an obstacle.
Hey, take a look at this. We got, oh man, that's a paragraph right there.
Let's check this one out, huh?
Dude, my good friend Matt from back in the day Good to see you, Matt. Talk about bid tournaments. Now that I think is actually a really important thing. So like there's different tournaments where you go and you could win bids to national tournaments, right? And not everyone gets to win that. And so now the things that were so far away and difficult to get to, now they might have like these explosion of entries. I think that's what they're talking about right there. And so yeah, I mean the thing is that like that's kind of structurally built in to the tournament sort of national circuit, is that not everyone can make it to all of them. So there's a bunch of those bid tournaments that are trying to offer it to people. And now if you only got one, first off, there's less bids. So do you just make more? You know what I mean? And then do you make it regional still? Like, I think, oh man, that's tough. I mean, that's tough.
I want to take a crack at kind of what Matt was asking about earlier too. Like, I think after the pandemic, we've been kind of proponents of this, and Jared's been a proponent of this long before the pandemic ever came, that asynchronous tournaments, specifically, I should say, which are online, should exist with or without a pandemic. Like, it is a form of debate. It is not like pandemic contingency debate. It's like its own form of debate. And so although there's uniqueness that it benefits us right now in this special time where there's nothing else and we're all kind of scrambling for answers, the format of the presentational debate and the using the camera and the deep research between speeches that you can, this is a form of debate that when Jared first told me about it, I was just like, I did not understand kind of what he was talking about. But as far as synchronous tournaments go, I think there may be room that, this is where you guys are really worried about how do you manage a tournament of, just a massive tournament. We've talked about it within our own company. Like, you just limit the entries. In my mind, you just go and almost, if you can get enough people behind you, you could actually create some pretty elite tournaments if everyone wants in, and you can kind of, have some sort of criteria for getting in, and now all of a sudden you can kind of build these different levels of tournaments. You can teach schools how to run their own tournaments, and it really the key is formalizing the structure and having like systems. Go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
Okay. Hey, Tim, did you ever like go to qualify for tournaments? Did you qualify for AFA or any other?
Yeah. I mean, those. I shouldn't say we didn't go to like the AFA district qualifier, but it's all the tournaments we went to met the criteria to qualify events. So I qualified a few things, but we didn't end up going to AFA.
I mean, like there's a bunch of invitationals that like have at least 2 or 3 different tournaments under your belt in order to qualify for it. And so now the question is, you just convert all of them that used to exist now into an online format. And then, like, do you monitor who, like, does District 1 competitors, get to enter in District 6 qualifier? I mean, and how do you,
what's funny is like
hard to figure that out.
Yeah. If you are able to, or if one question is, can each district even coordinate to do it? Right. Cause I mean, what would really mess that up in a perfect world, if every district got on their game right now and made a contingency plan to do this each in their district in case they didn't, then you probably wouldn't run into the problems you're talking about, because every person,
I guess, are a little different.
They would just go to what they would have normally
still
done.
They have let's say being able to compete at like 3 or 4 tournaments on one weekend.
Yeah. Imagine if only one district got their stuff together. Yeah. That would flood the tournament, right? That would be like, they have the tournament set up. Everyone from every state goes there. That would be some crazy situation, which, technically speaking, as long as you can, fund judging and fund the systems and everything works, then technically there is no way you could do it. But then, that does make administrative problems.
Yeah.
So. I think that it's honestly kind of a huge opportunity. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's kind of a huge opportunity to streamline tournaments, or at least like franchise, like kind of, stylized tournaments that all of them will have these kind of criteria. So, if you take some expert in online tournaments, someone that's done a lot of it, take like Danny Cantrell, right? Like he's already got several that he's run under his belt. Or even like, I understand that NSDA, the high school nationals, went swimmingly. Like, I heard it was like a really brilliantly run tournament. Take some of those people that are just like rock stars at figuring out the online game, and have them train all of the coaches that would otherwise be putting on these tournaments and say like, all right, here's what you're going to need. Here's the process. Currently, there's a huge discrepancy between just about every tournament, right? Like, how many rounds is it? What's the, the entry size, but like where the topic's coming from? What's the organization? Like, how do we normally, determine elimination rounds? All that kind of stuff is different from tournament to tournament. You could theoretically standardize all tournaments to be the same, given that all of us have to be doing it in this new mode anyways. Like when everyone's learning something new, that is an opportunity to streamline it. And that actually maybe could create a little bit more, equitable qualification process for, the more larger bid tournaments.
Yeah. I hope we can be the provider of some of these answers, by the way. DebateSensei works hard on these systems, and I don't want to sound like a biased fool.
We're putting together the first asynchronous debate tournament that I've ever heard of. You know what I mean? It's like, we're gonna be working on that. But at the same time, like that's not going to be sort of recognized as any sort of qualifier necessarily.
Not yet. It'll take time.
I mean, I'd love to talk with these organizations about that. You know what I mean? It's like if you want that to happen, that's cool. I just want to make sure that we're not, contributing to any problems either.
I think
these are weird things. I like because what I'm hearing, and if I'm playing it out in my mind, right?
Yeah,
that might mean that there's less overall people who qualify. Right, because if they go to several tournaments, they take away those particular spots. If they win at all of them, then they kind of take away spots from other people. It's like it might be structurally built in to the tournament schedule that like distance and location is sort of part of the strategy. And now distance and location don't matter. It does matter. Time zones. Imagine that. Like now you have people in a 3 hour or more, like Hawaii.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Imagine
and New York,
Hawaii,
East Coast,
New York,
and Hawaii. That would be a 6 hour difference, I think, sometimes. That would definitely affect a synchronous tournament much more heavily, right? I think, we keep flipping between these modes. Synchronous, everyone's worried about internet speeds and just kind of making, all that tech stuff that can just catastrophically ruin the debate really comes to bear. Time zone comes to bear. You're right. Is it fair? I mean, and that's where the school is just going to have to make a decision. If a student says, I could stay up till midnight and do a debate, and that's what I'm going to do. Like, it's not an excuse. That's not going to be like a factor in your judging score or something like that. It's going to be how did you do? And those are really realistic things. Like maybe that really matters. And if you can't have a whole school participate at 3 a.m. somewhere, then you shouldn't be in that tournament, I guess. Or who am I to say that? I just mean to say like,
Think about the infighting. It's kind of like, why do we have to wake up so early? Why can't you guys just,
right?
That's where everyone gets real authoritarian. The administrators of tournaments, like you don't mess with them. They make the rules.
Yeah.
I think you could just get really hardcore on the timing that tournaments are not allowed to exceed X number of hours. So I would think you can spread it over more days. While it sucks. So like NFA more recently has been spreading their tournaments to be like 5 days long. Like
those are the best tournaments.
Like just marathon tournaments. So the most recent NFA went until Tuesday. Like that's bananas. Like we were debating, Friday or Thursday or Friday through Tuesday. So while I don't think that's ideal, clearly hundreds of competitors have already done something like that. So maybe that's one of the ways that you can compress time. So I know from hired judge Blake Longfellow was talking about that very issue and saying like, all right, we've got to streamline these, like the time zone issue between tournaments. Can we all just universally agree that the West Coast gets up at 7 a.m. and the East Coast is willing to like debate until 10 p.m. or something like that? Make some of those sacrifices and everyone's on board with it. Like say the tournament will not exceed this, then cool. But like, it's also really damn hard to keep a tournament exactly on time.
There has been tournaments that I have been at that have gone till midnight. I mean, that's actually, not completely unusual. At least the, final round of the day is like some crazy hour you didn't expect. But so it's not totally out of there. I think people are going to just have to know ahead of time. They're going to commit to what they know. I think we have a new question, Jared. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this.
Yeah, he's asking, when are the tournament dates released? Are they later than usual? I mean, the question is, even if they release the dates, is it going to...
Well, it's still
going to work. But
Jared, I think that you should pretty much, just assume that they're going to be late. It's not necessarily... So one, they just might not want to commit right now. You know what I mean? It's kind of like things are changing weekly, but two, it might be delayed, not because they're not willing to commit, because they probably have to make at least 2 different schedules. You know what I mean? It's like they're going to have a plan A and a plan B, or at least that's what I would do. And when you come up, that's what takes a whole lot of time. You know, like when you have, like what I'm saying, like what I'm talking about, it's like we take for granted how structurally embedded these tournament schedules are. They're the same every year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reason that they exist is because of this negotiation between universities and colleges. It's kind of like, well, is there one in the area at this on this weekend? And that's how they figure it out. But now it doesn't matter what area it is. It's like who's going to win these weekends? You know,
I had a discussion with a professor recently, and that was discussing how you can kind of mitigate the amount of students on. It's not exactly clear how we got to the point, but you can offset how many people are on campus any one day with online events. If you like just said like, hey, like we're gonna have a synchronous normal, IE or debate tournament all at once, but we're gonna take these events and put them online. That way, they're doing half their events online and they're doing half their events at the school. And that if you could get the student body actually in the campus down that any particular day, that might be a thing. We were just talking about just kind of how to accomplish goals. And actually we were talking about what will this look like in scheduling a tournament coming up. So, and the tournament was conventionally, in person, live, normal tournament. It was a huge tournament, and we're just excited to possibly help them with that. But these questions are definitely on everyone's mind, and I think they're definitely affecting the dates being releasing, each tournament date being released. And we're all telling you right now, you can get a tournament date right now. That doesn't really mean that it's going to happen, unfortunately, right now, to be honest.
Yeah. So on the other hand, these things have been embedded for so long. You could kind of already guess when the weekends are going to be. All right. I think the only thing that'll happen is like, will they exist or not what weekend it will be.
Yeah. I think that hybrid, I think, Matt, you probably hit it on the head. I think hybrid is probably going to be one of the most likely as soon as we are allowed to go back. Like online until then, probably synchronous online for the most part, but I would hope some hybrid of synchronous and asynchronous, even though they take different time lengths, like just to allow for some of those students that couldn't meet one or the other, or didn't have the bandwidth, or if particular campuses could or couldn't allow people,
or they're in Hawaii.
Right. I think that the timelines probably will stay, right? So for middle school and high school particularly, there are a lot fewer organizations making those decisions. Like you've got NSDA, and then you've got your districts that it's broken up into, and because there's kind of one governing body, who the people are, and those tournaments are already set. The dates are generally ahead of time. So long as the administration from the districts and from the national level are willing to still hold it that weekend, but just willing to adapt and do it online, the dates will probably stay the same. It just comes down to how fast can tournament directors become comfortable with running an online tournament such that they're able to keep that.
And how seriously the competitors and the coaches take the tournament. I mean, like I think, when I've noticed it in the legal profession a little bit, not to be jumping around too much, but like people don't want to do Zoom. They don't want to do, I want to do it the way we've always done it. And like, we all want to do it the way you've always done it. Like, that's not, we're not saying that we don't want to go back, that we won't want to hang out. I miss Tim. I miss Jared dearly. I haven't seen them since we've started this podcast. I literally, it's been a long time, but so we want to meet each other, but like we also cannot, you cannot, you should not. I don't say cannot very often, but from what I've been told, you cannot go do that right now. So in the meantime, we have to take this seriously if we want to do it. And that formalizing the tournament structures goes into keeping people serious, and also, treating it with as much respect as we can, as it's a necessity, if it's a necessity. Let's say that. And also if it's not, but definitely if it is.
So I would talk about a playbook, right? Like if you can determine that this is, talk to the people that have already done some online tournaments. Jared, I know that you've been part of some conferences that are about this and discussing it with other people that have done online. Get those people to be able to, iron out, here are the definite things to avoid, here's some best practices, and then be able to publish that for all existing tournament directors and then get a yay or nay from them. Because most tournament directors are established a year plus in advance. Like you talk about these things being ingrained. God, how many years has the Tabor Vitinsky happened that same weekend, right? Or the Griffin, or like some of these tournaments, and this is just Southern California. I can only imagine some East Coast tournament. It's once like the 130th annual, whatever.
Well, so like hell froze over.
Keeping tradition alive.
Level,
that's the fear, right? You don't want you don't want that year off.
Yeah,
right. Like they're long established. I think that's really worthwhile to plan for.
Just to get Lindsay got a little comment here, and she's 100% correct. I mean, teams, small schools, small budget teams, online access. We talk about access. Online tournaments definitely increase access for schools who don't necessarily have resources, or other reasons that you can't go. Disability. Who knows what the issue could be? Incarceration. We've talked about. Like, who knows what the issue is? Yeah. There's a million reasons why someone can't physically be somewhere.
I saw something about people asking about whether or not speech programs in prisons can now just sign up for these tournaments.
Absolutely, 100%.
Or tournaments from your brother's wedding, or like wherever. Like you could technically, you could do it from anywhere.
There are lots of barriers to entry to an activity that's supposed to be for everyone. Yeah. That's where I see like online can be pretty huge. Like generally, most of the U.S. has access to the internet one way or another. So I would think that right now more than ever, it's in schools' best interest to be figuring out how to get good, reliable equipment and internet access to their students, or bring the students to that access, like you were talking about before, Jared. Like, I think if they can solve that problem, or, and a lot of elementary and middle and high schools have been doing that. I know the first couple weeks of the pandemic in like downtown LA, they started setting up Wi-Fi hotspots. So like in neighborhoods, so that an entire school would for sure be able to access. Like, it's definitely doable, and it already has been done. So I would hope that can be carried into more tournaments, so as to increase that access across the board. I think that would be phenomenal to see, more Midwest and East Coast inclusion in West Coast tournaments and vice versa, right? Like, how many times have you competed on the East Coast? Like in your whole career, Jared or Matt, did you ever compete?
In moot court, I went to North Carolina. Boom.
The
farthest I ever debated was Muncie, Indiana, Ball State.
Philadelphia, was it Philadelphia? Yeah.
Okay, Jared wins.
Yeah, a few times.
Right, but like, so a few times out of how many dozen tournaments did you do over your career? Like, I think it'd be pretty cool if you could do a lot more East.
I thought too, like, the convention of a tournament is going to start to erode away. Like, what if I want to debate Harvard? So I just email Harvard and I'm like, yo, what team do you want to debate me? I want to do an online debate. Yeah. Like why? Like the construct of a tournament is technically there because you have to allocate resources to get a student to see some of the student and all this. And like, I was just thinking that popped into my head while you were talking right now, Tim. Like, schools could practice against other schools with online debate. Like, you could just you could actually increase the amount of time you see some of the people maybe you've known through school and stuff like that, because you could set up time to work with them. And if the school could formalize those inter-school type scrimmages and stuff like that, that would be cool. But otherwise, anyone like, you could still do this. All these students that were making their own tournaments, just joining freely. Like, you can technically use this to your advantage, individually on top of the conventional tournament structure.
I would sure hope that there's some hybrid model there for sure.
I would love to help everyone out, if we can.
Yeah, it just like I'm astounded at all the sort of issues and problems that come up. When you think it's just like, like we just do this video conferencing, but like when you start but apparently NSDA did it. You know what I mean? It's like and I saw that it was just they were just amazing at how they did it. And so like when you got the resources to put into it, it can be amazing. And I think a national tournament is not a problem. Mm-hmm. It's the regional stuff, the stuff that like when the national tournament is kind of like, well,
the most funded.
Yeah. Well, like that's most funded, but it's also kind of like, well, it doesn't matter where you're from. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you qualify. But now on regional tournaments, it was, there's a specific group of regional outline that kind of groups these areas together. And then, you kind of have these different stages that you go on in order to qualify and then move on. And all these different regional differences in performance too, like I'm not too familiar with the high school level sort of politics, but at the, at the college level, AFA is dominated by Midwest and dip it down into the South too, in Western Kentucky, and so and not on the West Coast all that much, right? But if you're in like the 2-year or college level, that's reversed. What I mean? It's like the California colleges have sort of this position nationally that the rest of the country doesn't, and so it's I wonder if those regional differences, if they get mixed earlier in the season, how that is going to affect their performance.
Debate.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
I think that'd be great. Like broaden it, like increase the number of the variety of experiences and performances that students are coming up against and the judges are seeing. Because I think it comes to a huge level. The judges see some phenomenal performance from a student in Florida and bring that back to their school in Oregon. Like, hey, I've never seen this before, but guys, we should be practicing this. Like, that's cool. I think more of that is better.
I want to jump in right before we sign off here and just say thank you all for watching and joining us today and for all of your comments. We look forward to being with you next week and answering more questions or just talking about whatever's on your mind. And it's just really flattering to see all of you here with us. So thank you.
Yeah. If you got anything that you want us to talk about, all right, or you want to ask questions about it while we talk about it, all right, just let us know. You post it up in the comments. We get a notification. Okay. So that's our time, everybody. That is Tim Seavey from Visolutions, Matt Shapiro, Esquire. I'm Jared Kubica Miller, your professor of communications. Thank you all very much for joining us. All right. We'll see you next week.